and Climate Change Resilience. I'm Qazi Nabil Ahmed, Member of Parliament from Bangladesh and member of the Standing Committee for Foreign Affairs in Bangladesh Parliament. Today we'll be joining co-chair Mr. G.D. Tripathi, CEO, Assam Disaster Management Authority. And we also have as our distinguished panelists, Dr. Nandita Barua, Head of Asia Foundation, India. We have Dr. Pema Gematso, Director General, International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Dr. Partha J. Das, Senior Fellow for Asian Confluence, Head of Water, Climate and Hazard Division, Aranyak. Dr. Anil Gupta, National Disaster Management Authority, and Mr. Tanvish Shakil Joy, Member of Parliament, Bangladesh Parliament, Parliamentary Standing Committee for Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. I welcome you all to this technical session 3. I would just like to start out with saying a few words. We in South Asia, we are residents over here, the 8 countries of SAARC, and especially what we are meeting today over here, all the countries of Bay of Bengal Basin. And we're talking about cooperation and development. And of course, whatever development we do, one of the headwinds that all of us in South Asia we meet jointly is the disaster management and climate change events that are happening all around us. I would just like to point out, even in 1970, there was a huge cyclone in then East Pakistan in a district called Bhola and Barisal area. At that point, at that cyclone, nearly 1 million people died in that cyclone. I remember in my youth in the 80s, in 85, there was also a huge cyclone in southern Bangladesh called Urid Chor, and there were thousands of people who lost lives then. But even right now, we have cyclones happening all over South Asia and in Bangladesh as well. But in Bangladesh, even recently, we have had Amphan that hit both India and Bangladesh. In 2007, we had Sidr that also hit the region as well. But nowadays, we see that the casualties are in single digit. That is because over last 30 years, 40 years, especially last 10, 15 years, a lot of measures have been taken in Bangladesh and likewise in other countries in South Asia as well to make the disaster management much better so that casualties are kept to a minimal. So we have distinguished panel here today who have a deep knowledge about the issues. So I would like to go first with Dr. Partha J. Das. And in the interest of time, I would like to keep the panelists, their discussions to 5 to 7 minutes. Dr. Das, please, the floor is yours.
Respected Chair, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to go first. That's a real privilege. So, ladies and gentlemen, when the IPCC launched the second part of the AR6 annual assessment report 6 in February 2022, very recently, that arose a lot of alarms all over the world, including our part of the continent, South Asia, India. But little did we think that some of the projections that they have done will be proved to be so prophetic. Because right from next month, March 2022, till today, April, May, we have passed through the entire Indian pre-monsoon season, Indian summer, spring and summer season. And throughout South Asia, this summer season has proved to be one of the harshest ever. We have seen a lot of places in India that were experiencing very, very high record-breaking temperatures, more than 45 degrees, more than 47 degrees all around the country. In Pakistan, situation was even worse. In March itself, some of the areas in Pakistan crossed 49 degrees. And last week, in May, some areas in Pakistan had record-breaking temperatures of more than 51 degrees centigrade. For example, the case of Jakokabad is very well known now. So this shows the gravity, the seriousness of impact of climate on the region as a whole, the South Asian region as a whole. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. I will furnish a few facts and figures just to give you a sense of the vulnerability profile of the region, South Asian region as a whole. And then we will come to some ideas about how to force cooperation and collaboration for jointly mitigating and addressing the threat of climate change. Now, the entire South Asian region, the 89 countries, and if you slightly expand it, the Bay of Bengal region as a whole, are naturally climate vulnerable because of a few reasons: the unique geography, the long coastal lines, the large coastal areas, huge population burden, and poverty. These are basic factors that make us very highly climate vulnerable. And I'm quoting some statistics from the very recently published IPCC report, as well as some recent assessments by World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. The IPCC report has said that the impact of climate change could result in a loss of 2% of GDP in South Asian country. That's a lot, by 2050. Without adapting measures, if you come to the case of India, then India's GDP losses from sea level rise alone will be second only to China by 2080. And those are huge. I started by giving you examples of heat stress, which is actually the current hazard that all of the entire country is suffering from, entire Southeast is suffering from. And the report warns us the exposure to extreme heat is expected to become more frequent, intense, and long-lasting in entire South Asia, increasing the likelihood of droughts in arid areas. In fact, the entire Indus and Ganga river basins will be experiencing deadly heat waves, and that could cross the limits of human survivability. That is exactly happening now. More than 51 degrees centigrade in Pakistan, around 15 degrees centigrade even in early summer months in India, with some of the regions already experiencing such conditions. By the end of the century, South Asia will be one of the regions hardest hit by heat stresses, with outdoor workers saying the number of climatically stressful work days highly reduced out of 365 days to only 250 days per year. Then on the top of it, the very much known case of the faster melting of the Himalayan glaciers, which are giving rise to many observed and many potential cases of glacial lake outburst flooding, which is common in Bhutan, which is common in Nepal, and even very recent assessments have said that Nepal is having around 20 potentially dangerous glacial lakes. Bhutan is still having about 25 number of potentially dangerous glacial lakes, which pose threats of flash flooding in downstream areas, including India and including some parts of India, western India, as well as Assam. And then the report lays maximum emphasis on the crisis that's happening in the water and energy sector. It says about 2 billion people living in India and China suffer from water scarcity for at least 1 month a year. In the coming days, in the Indus, Ganga, Brahmaputra plains of South Asia, the Himalayan rivers will become more and more crucial because people will become even more dependent on mountainous rivers, since there is a heavy depletion of groundwater on one hand, and then the faster depletion of glacial mass because of faster melting. Nepal has already lost 24% of its glacier area during 1980 and 2020. Coming to agriculture and food security, it says that extreme droughts and heat waves will have very negative implications for agricultural income and crop productivity. A large proportion of the 300 odd million people exposed to lower agricultural yields when temperature rises to 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is the global attempt down of warming, will be from South Asia. We can go on, and all these and most of these, impacts of disaster and climatic risk will be having a very, very detrimental impact on women. The special question is that women in South Asia disproportionately bear the brunt of climate change, as evident from reports on impact on heat stress, flood, drought, and food insecurity, that and as well as malnutrition that we are experiencing, along with poverty on women, leading to more workload, malnourishment, and poor physical health. Also, there will be very harsh urban environment triggered as a result of climate change in many of the South Asian cities. It says that beside heat, South and Southeast Asian cities will together account for 3/4 of the urban land which is prone to high frequency of flood risk. South Asia's many coastal cities are relatively unprotected from sea level rise, with one of the highest coastal protection deficit in world. The cities are also threatened by too little water in the form of urban droughts, with Delhi, Karachi, and Kolkata being among the most vulnerable. The other important issues are that we are familiar is one, land erosion. If you talk about Assam loses about 85 square kilometer of land to our rivers almost regularly every year. And there are other examples of land erosion from high fragile Himalayan hills, the coastal region, etc., which is also taking serious proportion. Sea level rise is a very, very important issue, and many of our coastal and low-lying cities are on the verge of getting submerged, which we all know. They have placed special caution on Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and cities like Mumbai. And of course, the case of Malé and Maldives is also very, very serious. Now, actually, there are many more examples from many more other literature, many more sources of information, which all go together to point to the fact that South Asian region has become very, very vulnerable to climate change.
If you can wrap up in a minute.
Yeah, sure. Now, with this kind of vulnerability profile, what do we do for doing something jointly in a cooperative manner for all the countries of the region? I mean, there are areas of potential cooperation, like providing reliable flood forecasting and flood warning between India and Bangladesh. Of course, as far as India is concerned, Brahmaputra is concerned, China is a very integral part of the entire thing, but for many reasons, China is absent from this kind of a discourse, but that is not avoidable. I mean, but although Bangladesh and India have very good understanding, we have regular hydrological data, we are yet to see the best kind of flood forecasting and flood warning models coming up out of joint exercises, which is, I think, a gap and can be tackled. Then everybody is now talking about transboundary adaptation. Adaptation has to go beyond the national boundaries, and different kind of organizations of South and Southeast Asia have to take up adaptation in a regional sense. I would conclude by reminding you that we really need good institutions at, say, regional level for tackling most of these problems. I hope you will remember that in the days of the SARC, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, there used to be a couple of institutions like the SARC Disaster Management Center, like the SARC Meteorological Center, like the SARC Forest Center, located in different countries, but somehow they failed to deliver, and the institutions are still there, but they have not, lived up to the expectation of the people of the region. Similarly, BIMSTEC, recently we have seen that under the BIMSTEC initiative, centers like the BIMSTEC Weather and Climate Change Center have been established, which operates out of India. We hope that in future, the BIMSTEC institution will flourish, will give us an example where it will be demonstrated that it is possible for all South Asian countries to work together in the true spirit of scientific cooperation to address the very serious and common threat of climate and disaster risk to the entire region, including India and Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Das, for your very good introduction to the whole topic. You did remind us about the heat that we have all experienced all across the region, from Pakistan to India to Bangladesh to other places. I would like to now ask Dr. Anil Gupta of National Disaster Management Authority to give his speech. Thank you very much.
Very good afternoon. So first of all, I must compliment Government of Assam, Government of Bangladesh, various agencies of Government of India, Asia Confluence, and all other agencies for taking such a wonderful initiative. Thanks, Chair, for inviting me. I have 7 very quick points, so I hope that I will finish in 5-6 minutes. Though this session is now is like coffee after a dessert, when we go for a dinner and then you have already completed your dinner and already enjoyed your dessert, then someone says that let us have a cup of coffee. So some people would still be there to enjoy coffee also. Some would say no, thanks. So anyway, I'm very happy to see good gathering still. So first point, I would like to recall that very wonderful thing that now we have started linking the ecological issues and the issues of natural resources in relation with disaster management globally also, and particularly also looking at realization of this thought process at local level. That's very important because globally that has been in policy. I would like to refer my in fact, I witnessed the 6th Asian Ministerial Conference, and I was part of the negotiation. And it was really hard something to integrate the natural resources or the ecosystem related issues to get incorporated into a disaster risk management policy. So that was the first time, the Bangkok Declaration, we had to work hard. And I recall that how cooperation works. So many of the countries, even during the tea breaks, we could lobby that no, we want this ecosystem word within the declaration. So I think that was the first beginning. I thought I should refer to this. And we had a roundtable on sustainability concerns in disaster risk management. Otherwise, most of the time, the disaster management is primarily focused on the saving life, rescue, relief, and the humanitarian concerns. Though those are also very, very important when the disaster is already there. And the second initiatives came from the India's worthy Prime Minister, Prime Minister Modi, who inaugurated the 7th Asian Ministerial Conference in 2016, and that happened in New Delhi, and he gave a 10-point agenda. And I think it is not only the 10-point agenda being referred for disaster management in India, but most of the Asia Pacific countries, because of its relevance, the kind of 10 points he has identified, that everyone thinks that has come up as a kind of a very, very crucial 10 points. So it's a kind of a central mantra for developing disaster resilience. And I would like to refer 3 points of that are most important. One is that all the sectors to imbibe the principles of disaster risk management. So whether we are working in agriculture sector, whether we are in the medical sector, or whether we are into industry sector, all sectors. So I think Government of India has taken recently some good initiatives that all the sectoral ministries at central government level, we have asked that all the ministries to prepare their national level disaster management plans, sectoral plans. And just to share with you, we had a session today on resilient agriculture, sustainable agriculture. That is, we have prepared, and now the first one in the list is the National Agriculture Disaster Management Plan. That is the first ever in the world. And many countries are now looking at it, that how that can be replicated in other parts of the world also. But it is directly useful, directly relevant to the countries in this region. And that is the first ministry in the government. So out of the they are almost 45 to 50 ministries we have. That is the first Ministry of Agriculture that has come, and realizing that has come realizing the fact that agriculture is still the backbone of the livelihood of the people. So same is with Bangladesh also, same is with many other neighboring countries. So that is one example. Second thing is localizing resilience agenda. So whatever we talk at national level, how do we take at local level? I think that's very, very important, because in these conferences we come up with excellent declaration. But how do we ensure that some ground change is there? So how do we do that? I think that is very important. And the last one, that is the 10th one, is creating a network or some kind of a joint response framework. So whenever there are transboundary nature of disasters, for example, we had Nepal earthquake, so how in that time we should not wait for any kind of a if and but. The countries should be ready to help and to assist each other and to have joint emergency support systems. So I'm just referring 3. And the third point that has already been referred in the morning also, nature-based solutions. I think the NADI brings this 2 days deliberation brings also a very important focus, that something which has multiple benefits. So if we integrate nature-based solutions in disaster resilience framework, climate change adaptation framework, so it helps build and strengthen livelihood also. And I think that's very, very important, because no framework of disaster resilience can be success if it is not centered on community, centered on the needs of the people. I think that's very important. So I would not be going to detail, but here one example that is of the interest to Bangladesh also, that how do we look at the urban-rural connect? Because many times we talk of urban disaster management and we talk separately rural disaster management. But I think there is a very strong connect, and currently we are also working in India that how do we look at the peri-urban systems, means the area that neither the city managers would talk nor the rural managers would talk. But I think that's very, very important area that encompasses a number of important ecosystems. Another aspect is that we also have the avenues of cooperation and learning from each other. What I am saying, that each other, not only that we teach other countries are like this, we also have a lot to learn from even the smaller countries, because when we talk of localization, so in India we have whatever national plans we develop a counterpart, that the district guidance book, that if the national plans are there, how the district administration will look at it. And currently we are working on this Gram Panchayat. I hope that term is known to you, Panchayati Raj institutions. And on the 5th of this June itself, we are going to have a large congregation in Lucknow, in the capital of Uttar Pradesh, which would be chaired by the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, that how Gram Panchayat would imbibe the principles of disaster risk management and climate change adaptation. So the entire planning based on the Gram Panchayat. So basically the village is strengthening for disaster resilience. And then certainly this is also the time we are witnessing a major disruptions all around us. Disruptions, I'm not referring in terms of negative sense, but I think in a positive sense, but certainly with cautions. We all are going to witness very fast. We have already witnessed, and maybe next few years, we are going to witness disruptive change in technology. COVID, we have already seen the robotics, the most of the things automation centered. Now most of the city management are not actually human managed. Most of the city management system, whether it is water supply, whether it is a waste management system, all kind of monitoring done by automation. And more robotics we are going to see. Second thing, we are also witnessing, not only in India, but in this entire region, a major disruption in the social settings. Now we are connected to each other through our WhatsApp, Facebook, social media, internet, but we are not connected person to person. And I think this is inevitable. We cannot have a clear solution to that. So we also have to start looking at how do we look at our disaster risk management of the future. And in India, we are currently working for the vision plan for 2047, that how do we see various sectors in India. There we also have an implicit component of regional cooperation, because India's vision for any sector is not only for the country, but we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And I totally agree with what our the finance minister also referred, the chief minister also referred, and the foreign minister of the Bangladesh also referred, that we cannot be happy if our neighbors, our partners, our family members are not happy. So I think it's happiness together. And again, the reiterating the principle that India believes in, the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we will have to work together. Lastly, I would refer that India has a big potential and countries can look at us for our support. Globally, there is no country which has a disaster management system as big as India. Our National Institute of Disaster Management, that is located in India, we have a capacity of more than 70 professionals working on disaster management. They are the disaster management experts, more than 70. I think nowhere in the world. And that is a big opportunity to use, interact, and take the benefits in capacity building. So thank you very much, and for providing me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts, and looking forward for more cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anil Gupta, for a very illuminating thoughts on all the measures that are being taken in India in disaster management. There's a lot of learnings for all of us. And I think your talk was also very interesting. I see the room has slightly filled up more since the afternoon sessions. I do realize it's a late afternoon session. Everybody's having a hard time keeping awake. But I do hope you keep patience with us. It is about disaster, which affects all of us to some extent. So on a lighter note, anyway, I would like to ask our next speaker, Dr. Nandita Barua, Head of Asia Foundation India, to give her speech.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity, and thanks to the organizations of the NADI conference for having me here. Even as we are talking about disaster, Assam is at this moment dealing with a flood situation, as we all know, close to 799 villages underwater, about 35,000 hectares, I think, a little more maybe, which have land which is underwater, close to 5 lakh plus people affected. So we are here talking about disaster and cooperation, and we are in this state where a current disaster is happening, unfolding, and steps are being taken to address. From Bhuj till now, India has come a long way in how we deal with disaster. One of the first achievements that we have had, of course, is reduction and the ability to reduce the loss of life when a disaster happens. So when we do talk about disaster, I think the focus, of course, is first on early warning, level of preparedness, all of which help to reduce fatality to human life. But it's also about rescue, early recovery, and rehabilitation. All become a part of the discourse on disaster. We are talking now within that discourse about how regional cooperation and international cooperation can happen and what can be done better. We have a great framework, the Sendai. We all know about it. Each country, nation states have adopted it, changed it, made it accountable to its own realities. I lived through a disaster in Nepal. I don't wish for anybody to go through it. It was horrible to be in a building which you didn't know whether it's going to stay or fall. lessons learned, I think. Lessons learned was that India as a first responder did an amazing job in coming to the support of that nation. First thing that happened, I think Nepal is very dependent on tourism. So the big cry for help was to really rescue the 200 plus tourists which were caught on Everest. The Indian Army and the Nepal Army joined hands together to really take those people out. There was, of course, the unfolding of disaster all around. But I think when you talk about cooperation, you need to see who can come in first to do what. A lot of development agencies came together, my organization as well, the Asia Foundation. We were in the forefront of trying to help out our communities, people where we live, the villages. The UN put together a task force. We looked at a number of things. Nepal had been preparing for that disaster for years, just like a lot of us do. Unfortunately, I would have really loved to see a lot more colleagues from Nepal today. And Navita and I are talking about the fact that we are missing many colleagues from Nepal. It is really wonderful to see the delegation from Bangladesh. I wish we had more from Nepal as well. But I guess there are, we'll have other opportunities to see more. So what is it that happened and that worked and didn't work? Preparedness knew it was an earthquake-prone zone. We worked. Certain things did fall into place. I think there's an initial shock of disaster we have to understand. So having institutions who are prepared, not just as an institutional structure, but as people on the ground who can deliver. India's experience from Bhuj till date is that through our disaster preparedness plan, maybe some of you know, we have what is called the Apada Mitra, which is your grassroots level volunteers who are being trained, started in 2016. Is going really well. I think the idea is to get more and more people on the ground to support the institutions because institutions don't function without humans. And giving that capacity and skills to people is something that's very critical. But institutions need framework. So while the Apada Mitra is an experience or friends during disaster is a framework that we can talk about and share with others, there is also the larger thing which was recently announced at Glasgow, the IRIS. The framework for small and developing nation states to have more disaster responsive, disaster resilient infrastructure. Now, while I think these are great frameworks and great operational, examples to put in forward, I do think having, and similar frameworks existed in Nepal as well. And I'm quoting Nepal only as an example, not as anything beyond that. But yet there were things that did fall by the side, gender and inclusion. Unfortunately, we have to accept the fact that disaster do affect people differently, whether you are marginalized, economically welfare of, women, children, elderly, disabled. If your frameworks do not have that inclusion and equity lens, then I think our ability to respond in a way that is equitable and that can really provide the relief needed always falls short. Little things which had a framework are difficult to implement. A shelter where there is a separate space for women who are pregnant, have recently delivered, or lactating. A shelter in a hilly area which is accessible to people with disability, or how do you take them there? While you are distributing relief and distribution, what does your framework tell you about how a village is situated and where the most marginalized communities live, and can you reach and access them as equitably as those who are in the front end of the road? Questions that we had to ask ourselves repeatedly through that disaster and find answers to. To the credit of Nepal, I would say most organizations came together once we realized that these things needed to be done, and we tried to do our best. What I'm alluding to now is in this August gathering, when we are talking about cooperation and regional exchanges and supporting one another, I think in all our framing, whether it's the Apada Mitra or it's the IRIS or it's the Sendai, or we adapt our National Disaster Management Plan as Anilji talked, I feel it's essential to unpack it from the lens of equity and inclusion to be really most effective. Livelihood get affected differently. Struggles about the head of the family dying without a land patta or the right to land, and how does the women or the child or the son take that rehabilitation support that you're providing if the information is missing? securing data in a way that you don't depend on paper data at the grassroots, but there is a base somewhere who can verify and inform the rescue and rehabilitation. There are case studies across the world on this. These are not new things and not rocket science. These have been done by different countries. Collaboration and cooperation requires that we gather all of this, bring it together, and put it so that each of us, when we are impacted with a disaster, don't have to struggle and scurry and hurry to find out how to act. We lose time. We lose time. We lose time, we lose life. And that's what we are trying to save. And I do think that India, as a front runner in the region, can really have a major role to play if we take on this challenge and say collectively with South Asia and our ASEAN colleagues, we will focus on creating this framework which is globally acceptable, available, but also creating the systems that can maintain it, whether it's data, whether it's an SOP, whether it's a checklist that responds to each of these needs that are absolutely essential to look at in a disaster. I hope in this NADI conference, as we talk about reverse flowing, we have a flow of ideas and thoughts. We look at sharing our ideas and our frameworks as easily as the river flows to contain the river that we are all looking to live with, and which really is not going to be in any way managed by us. So we need to manage it in a way that we respect what it can do as a river, but also as other natural calamities, where I have seen an entire village disappear under a glacial flow. And we don't even know the number of people who have died. So I do hope you go back with the sense that we need a collective thinking on this, and we need a programming and a thinking that really makes our disaster response cooperation from an absolutely gender and equity inclusive lens. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nandita Barua. Thank you for bringing the issues of gender equity and inclusion to the table. It's very important we don't forget whenever a disaster happens, it doesn't happen equally for everyone. Some people are more affected than others, and they need extra help to get through the difficult times they face. Now on to our next speaker. I would like to invite Mr. Tanveer Shakil Joy, Honorable Member of Parliament of Bangladesh National Assembly, and member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Please give your speech. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. As we all know that Asia is the most disaster-prone region on the planet. South Asia's large coastal population, monsoon, cyclones, the rain patterns creating a particularly vulnerable combination. A coordinated multilateral approach with a strong climate lens in focus is needed for effective and holistic approach to address the disaster management. The COVID-19 pandemic has further complicated cooperation on disaster management. Many Asian countries were forced to handle traditional disaster and the pandemic simultaneously. The past 2 years have underscored the importance of involving health experts, national governments, international organizations, NGOs, community members in the planning process going forward. There are actually 4 key sectors for managing disasters: response, recovery, mitigation, and preparation. High emphasis should be given on the importance of place-based planning, as there are similarities between many South Asian nations in terms of shared natural hazards and vulnerabilities. This sharedness presents auspicious opportunities for collaboration. There are some clear hurdles, such as a lack of trust between countries, possible duplication of efforts, and aversion of data sharing. That's more related to the concern of sovereignty. Technology is a very important tool to tackle various disciplines and overlapping concerns when dealing with disaster, where, as I mentioned just before, that an aversion of data sharing is a major challenge, and there machine learning can act as a very effective tool to securely process a huge number of data quickly, as well as establishing a centralized accessible data bank where all the countries can access and get the data at the right time. Here, both the public and private sectors can work simultaneously. At the international level, it is of utmost importance that data sharing and collection across the Indo-Pacific region get elevated greatly. Now, if we come to the point of climate change is a glaring, harsh reality now. South Asian geophysical location and socio-economic demographic vulnerabilities make the region highly susceptible to climate change ramifications. This region has been experiencing climate change in the form of changing precipitation patterns, lethal and frequent heat waves, and humid heat stress, warming of the Indian Ocean faster than global average, melting the Himalayan glaciers, leading to floods, landslides, and experiencing more intense tropical storms. We all know about Ayla, Sidor, Nargis, so on and so forth. These extreme climatic shifts are actually putting increased strain on the agricultural output, ecological balance, freshwater resources, and it's actually also severely affecting our infrastructure, damaging the infrastructure, thus posing an existential threat to the region's food, water, safety, public health, energy, and biodiversity security. South Asia is one of the most heavily populated regions with 1.81 billion inhabitants. Around 750 million South Asian people have already witnessed at least one or more climatic catastrophe in their lifetime already in the past 2 decades. While around 800 million South Asian residents will reside in future climatic hotspots. A significant part of South Asian population depends on climate-sensitive livelihoods. We all know that we are heavily dependent on agriculture, fisheries, forestry, making them highly vulnerable to these climate change aspects. It had been projected that South Asian region will suffer an average economic loss of 160 billion by 2050, which is 7 billion higher than the world average. This poses another serious problem of climatic change. And we will have around 40 million climate-induced refugees by 2050. On the other hand, South Asian region is having one of the fastest growing economy. We all know about Bangladesh, India. We are one of the world's powerhouses, economic powerhouses now. It has a very high potential. So for that reason, it has a very high potential to counter climate change by rebuilding its economy around cleaner energies, green job training, and investing in resilient infrastructure. Now, Bangladesh is ranked as the 7th most effective country due to climate change. Annual loss described as staggeringly $3 billion annually. 12 million people will be climate refugee by 2050. Bay of Bengal, now, we have a lot of similarities. Bay of Bengal, coastline similarities. Our land elevation are almost common between India and Bangladesh and in this region. So this actually makes both of our countries more vulnerable to climate change problems. But at the same time, if we have improved bilateral collaboration between India, Bangladesh, with other neighboring countries, with a strongly laid climate action roadmap, this will result in mutual and equitable benefits for the two neighboring in tackling the climate emergency. Bangladesh and India both are emerging as economic powerhouses, as I mentioned. This leads to very high energy consumption. And that's centering on rapid urbanization, which account for 90% of regional greenhouse gas emissions. It is high time now to shift towards a meaningful regional collaboration which strengthen the climate resilience of targeted systems combined with a robust financial systems that can fund climate smart transition, and that could deliver our transition to green economy, to green development further and effectively. I'm going to mention about the Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, which was actually brainchild of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And in October 2018, it was actually launched and presented to the world. And in this Delta Plan, there are 3 goals I would like to mention, 3 particular goals. Goal number 3, it says, ensure sustainable and integrated river systems and estuaries management. Goal number 5 is develop effective institutions and equitable governance for in-country and transboundary water resource management. And our goal number 6 is achieve optimal and integrated use of land and water resources. That's major 3 goals of our Delta Plan 2100, which actually incorporates not only Bangladesh, the whole region. Moreover, in Delta Plan 2100, it also has a separate area which puts strong emphasis and detailed planning for transboundary water management mechanism. At the same time, during the 100th birthday of our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, we launched a very ambitious plan, Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, which actually encompasses our 8 5-year plan, Vision 2041, and Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, all incorporate our NDCs, NAP, everything included. And if I want to summarize that, it's a very utmost importance for us that as a region, that heavy climate smart investment in every sector are very crucial for this whole region to build a resilient economic environment, at the same time boost economic growth and reduce emissions, which is actually causing the climate change, and also creating these disasters. It's imperative that we accelerate regional cooperation in climate and hydro-meteorological services and river basin management, which was many times highlighted in this NADI 3, which enable us to reform and harmonize climate policies, share data on collective risks that resulting in better pre and post disaster management. We all know that Bangladesh is a role model for disaster management in the world. And we have already shifted from just after the disaster, this rehabilitation, relief, we actually shifted from that model. And now we are more focusing on, before going into the disaster, to have a better preparedness. So pre-disaster and post-disaster. And that's our whole holistic approach to disaster management now. To highlight the urgency of action to tackle climate change and have a better disaster management, I just want to conclude by quoting from our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina as a CVF chair. She quoted in the last COP26, I'm quoting, quote, "The time to save the planet is not tomorrow. The time to save the planet is not tomorrow, but today." Unquote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable MP. It's a very illuminating speech, and you did share a lot of the experience of Bangladeshis that we have been facing over the last few years. And I would like now to ask our next speaker, Dr. Pema Gyamatso, Director General of International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, to give his speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I hope you have had your coffee and you're refreshed and awake now. I think as a last speaker, there are some obvious advantages. I think a lot of the things that I have said have been already covered, so I can say thank you and leave. But I think the advantage is that probably because it's the last statements, most of you will go remembering what I had to say. So I think I'm counting on that. Yesterday we talked about rivers connecting, a lot of that, rivers do connect. But rivers have divided us. That is why we're talking about building bridges, building roads, building, and waterways and so on. But if we don't take care of bridges by preventing disasters, it's going to divide us again. So that is the point that I would like to make. Now, what I would like to say is, what are the trends? What kind of disasters we are facing in the region, in Assam, in Bangladesh, in Bhutan? What are the trends, frequency, and then what can be done and what needs to be done? So I will just quickly go through my slides. I don't know. Okay. I talked about Isimoth, so I hope you'll remember Isimoth as you leave the room. Okay. Then I also talked about why mountains matter, because the rivers originate from the mountains, from the glaciers, from the glacier lakes there. We have in the region 54,000 glaciers. Imagine that. 60,000 square kilometers of ice in the region. Imagine that. So please remember that. So they are the reservoir of fresh water, next only to the two poles, the North Pole and South Pole. More than 1 billion people are vulnerable, as already mentioned by several speakers. Now, disasters occur in many forms, floods being one of them, cyclones, storms, earthquake, and other events. So if you look at that, in terms of number of events, I think the flood events are much more. 41% are floods, 40% are events related to floods. Storms contribute to 29%. But, and if you look at the loss of lives, actually storms and cyclones kill more, but floods still contribute to around 17%. And then the point I want to make is all the billions and crores that we have been talking about. If you look at the economic loss, then floods causes the highest economic loss, 52% compared to 18% from storms. So 52% of the economic losses in the region are caused by storms. Disasters are only increasing, both in terms of frequency. Now, if you look at between 1980 to 1990, the first bar graph there, the number of events have increased, and you go to 1990 to 2000, it has doubled. And from 2000 to 2010, it has again doubled. In terms of number of events, in terms of loss of lives, in terms of economic loss, in terms of number of affected people. So that is the point. It's only increasing in both terms of intensity and frequency. Now, 2019-20, I don't have the data, but if you look at the 2017 data, Bangladesh, 114 deaths and 6.9 million people affected by floods. India, 600, more than 600 deaths and more than 32.1 million people affected. Nepal, 143 deaths and 1.7 million people affected. Disasters are happening regularly. Last year alone, we have this Melamchi flood. And disasters are not straightforward. There can be cascading and caused by a number of events. There could be a glacial melt and breaking of glacial moraine, glacial lake moraine. There could be sedimentation. There could be, the slope failure and so on. So if you look at the Melamchi disaster, it started right from the glaciers and then cascaded down. And then the human factor, building roads and, all those landslides caused by improper building of roads have caused the formation of artificial dams, and eventually it resulted in cascading number of disasters. I think many of you would remember the Chamoli disaster, the Chamoli floods. And again, this is not as straightforward. Initially, people thought it's a glove, glacial lake outburst flood. It was not. It was again a slope failure and case of several other events that contributed to it. Now, ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, is linking right up to what the Honorable MP just spoke about, the need for regional cooperation, need for a regional outlook on floods. So we have developed models for the Ganges, for the Brahmaputra that could be accessed, and using, of course, the free access data at the moment. But as mentioned by several speakers, we need cooperation in data sharing, information sharing, and together with the disaster management authorities of our countries, I think we can do better, and we need to do better. Now, this is an Assam-born innovation, intervention. I think one of the partners is here, Dr. Partha Das. You are very much involved in that. So this community-based flood early warning system is very practical, very simple, very affordable. And it has actually served a lot of purpose. In Assam, I understand there are 2 districts, 3 districts actually, where we have established together with the disaster management authorities here. And I was told it has actually saved lives. In 2013, there was a flood in Jandal River. The CV fuse was established there, and it has saved lives and property. But let me give a brief story of this system. In 2010, actually, a JICA, I hope the JICA representative is listening, JICA expert, senior expert, came up with the concept of having this a simple model. He drew a sketch And then our people developed that model and tested it in Assam. So it was first started with the wired system of information. Gradually in 2012, it was transformed into wireless system, and now from 2017 onwards, a telemetric system, where perhaps if we have regional cooperation, the Yak harder in Tibet, where Brahmaputra is known as Yarlung Sangpo, could actually SMS or call the rice farmer in Assam, oh, a flood is likely to happen. And in real time, we can get the information. So this is, I think, something that we are now working with the World Bank and the Disaster Management Authority of Assam State to scale up. And I hope we can do that in other parts of the region. With the support from Australia, we are actually working in the Koshi River Basin between Nepal, India, and China in terms of looking at disaster risk reduction. So, lessons learned, lack of data sharing, information sharing that you have already, heard. I will not go through all this list, but the opportunity, the solution is in transboundary cooperation. And then not only cooperation, transboundary level, but at all levels, local, national, regional, and even global. And then, of course, action must be taken in terms of not abusing the rivers. Pollution of all sorts, air pollution, liquid waste, solid waste, and all those. So I will not go through all this list. I think you have, but all I want to say is let us join hands to keep our rivers alive and running, not sleeping on its beds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pema. It was a very illuminating speech, and even the figure, 60,000 kilometers of ice. I've never, square kilometers of ice. Oh my God, that's like completely makes it a different, conceptually very outstanding. Thank you for your great presentation. We are at the very end of our session here today. And one of the things that has come out over here, as we talk about cooperation, regional cooperation, NADI is a very good initiative that has been taken years ago and that we are still continuing. I definitely want to thank Asian Confluence for continuing with the initiative, and that we want to bring all the countries together, not only to explore the opportunities, but also to face all issues that we might all have, and especially in disaster management and climate change. Not to emphasize the point anymore, but if there's any particular comment from the floor anyone wants to make that has not been addressed over here, or there's a pressing question, because we are slightly over time, and there's a next speaker, Honorable State Minister of India, who will be speaking over here. So I don't want to hold him up for too long. There's one person over there. Please, if somebody can just. There's one lady over there who wants to say something. Just a quick mic. We'll just take one or two comments, and if you can just limit it to within a minute. Excuse me, on the right over here. Gentleman over here. The lady in.
Okay, I'm Professor Sarah Hilali. The one thing that I think ICMOD only flagged is the man-made disasters. And one area which we have really ignored, maybe because of political reasons, is the entire 1,020 kilometers along the Tibet stretch, about 217 along the Bhutan stretch, and the other 527 along Myanmar, and that is Arunachal Pradesh. And if you look at the Brahmaputra, without looking at the Yarlung Sampo, which you mentioned, and whatever's happening down in Arunachal, I think this whole exercise would be a bit difficult. And the amount of man-made disasters happening in Arunachal Pradesh is phenomenal because of the real thrust. We are having inside Tawang, we are having tunnels inside. Whether they're really feasible or not, whether it's just for strategic reasons, we just don't know. People, sometimes they find the Siang having muddy waters. They really don't know what is happening, because right up till there, we are having military presence, all kinds of military activities are happening. So I think in the age of the Anthropocene, whenever we are dealing with climate disasters, I think man-made disasters is one,
Thank you.
and their mitigation should be a priority.
Thank you for your point. There's one young lady over there in the back, and I'll close with that. Uh, she's got the mic already. Yeah. Please go ahead. Please keep it to a minute. Thank you.
Thank you. With the permission of the chair, I'm Tanushree Bhaumik. I work in the intersection of energy infrastructure and gender. I wanted to make a quick comment. In the past 2 days, we have been talking about one of our most major shared resources, our rivers. And in one hand, we have been hearing about investments, especially infrastructure investments. And on the other, today, we are hearing about disaster risk management. And dare I say that not enough cross-pollination between the two. I mean, at least not at the level which is required with the imminent climate stress. I think it's time we demand from our policymakers that every time they make a public statement about infrastructure investments, especially in a vulnerable area like South Asia, they need to underpin it with their commitment on climate stress and the plan under the project for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we come to the close of our session on cooperation for disaster management and climate change resilience. I would like to thank Asian Conference and NADI for this great initiative. And I think a lot of illuminating points have come through this discussion. I would like to thank all the distinguished panelists over here and a very patient audience who gave us a patient hearing. Hopefully we will meet soon again and we'll be able to take this cooperation forward in the years to come. I want to thank everyone involved with the conference on behalf of us from Bangladesh as well. A big thank you to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of everyone present here, we'd like to thank you. And I request Shri MP Bezbarwa, the chairman of the Governing Council of Asian Conference, to kindly come on the stage and felicitate the chair and the co-chair and the panelists. Thank you very much. We'll have a group photograph. If you could kindly come in front of the tables. Thank you very much.